It is February of 1934, and my grandmother Della is standing at her cellar door outside Tipton, Indiana, lifting carrots out of a box of damp sand for that night's supper. The grocer in town wanted a nickel a bunch for carrots that winter, and Della had not paid him for one since the year she turned 12. That box of sand is the whole idea behind the 20 forgotten things my grandmother grew, so she never bought them again. She shopped for vegetables from a wooden box in her own cellar, not from a store. To Della, a store was where you went when you had failed to plan back in the spring. She ran a no-waste kitchen straight through the Great Depression on a root cellar and a springhouse, never a freezer in the house, and the produce aisle did not see a dime of her money from October to May. That produce aisle is the villain of this whole list. It sells you back, at 40 cents a bunch, the very carrot a packet of seed and a patch of dirt would have grown you for nothing. So settle in and hit subscribe now while you are thinking of it, because this is the exact wisdom the supermarket would rather you forget. Every one of these started in a dented red baking powder tin on a nail by that cellar door, the tin she called her bank. And number one, the one crop that fed the whole family clear to spring for not 1 red cent, I am saving for last. Let me count you down what was in it. Number 22 is the one nobody counts as a thing she grew, because it is the thing everything else grew in, the dirt itself. The modern garden store wants you to believe good soil comes in a plastic bag with a sunburst printed on the front. It does not. Della fed her garden the way the War Garden book laid it out in 1919, and the way Lydia Maria Child laid it out back in 1832, and it cost her nothing. Aged stable manure from any neighbour with a horse, spread over the ground in the fall and turned under. Wood ash from the kitchen stove, saved all winter in a covered bucket and scattered thin in the spring. And the grey, soapy wash water from Monday's laundry poured onto the beds instead of down the drain. Child wrote it plain, "Do not throw away suds, for ashes and suds are good manure for young plants." Every year that ground grew richer, and every year it cost the same. Nothing. Good soil never came in a bag. It came from under the horse, out of the stove, and off the washboard. Number 21 is why her garden fed the family from May to frost, instead of drowning them in July and starving them in September. The mistake nearly everyone makes is to put the whole garden in on one Saturday, then eat green beans until they cannot look at another one, then eat nothing at all. Della never did that. She sowed a short row, waited 2 or 3 weeks, and sowed the same crop again. Lettuce, radishes, beans, beets, carrots, peas, a little more corn. The War Garden Commission wrote it down in 1919 that string beans and lettuce and radishes and the rest want successive plantings 2 or 3 weeks apart to give a fresh and continuous supply all season. That is the whole trick. And it all came out of the tin. Every couple of weeks she would take it down off its nail, unfold a square of newspaper, shake a short row's worth of seed into her palm, and hang the tin back up. A garden is a habit, kept up from spring to fall, a pinch of seed at a time. And hers lived on a nail in that baking powder tin. Number 20 is the bag of salad. You know the one. The plastic clamshell, $3, that turns to slime in the crisper drawer 4 days after you carry it home. Della grew that salad in a row 18 inches long and cut it a leaf at a time. Loose leaf lettuce and radishes, sown from the tin in that same staggered rhythm from number 21, so there was always a young, tender row coming on while the old one bolted. She cut what she needed for supper and left the rest growing because a leaf of lettuce does not wilt in your refrigerator. if it is still standing in the dirt. A radish is up and pullable in 3 or 4 weeks from a seed that costs a sliver of a penny. Della's salad came in on the same knife she used to cut it, a leaf and a root at a time. Number 19 is where that box from the cellar door comes in. The carrots. This is the one Della was carrying in 1934, and it is the simplest keeping trick in the whole cellar. You take a wooden box or an old barrel, lay down 2 or 3 inches of clean, slightly damp sand, and lay your carrots in it in a single layer, not touching, tops trimmed off. Then more sand, then more carrots until the box is full. The War Garden book of 1918 spelled it right out: beets and turnips and carrots buried in slightly damp sand to good purpose. The sand does one clever thing. It mimics the cool, damp ground the carrot just came out of, so the carrot never quite learns it has been harvested, and it stays hard and sweet into March. A 50-pound bag of play sand runs a few dollars and keeps 30 or 40 pounds of carrots sound all winter. The store wanted a nickel a bunch in Della's day, and wants the better part of $1 in mine. Hers cost a box of sand and a cool corner of a cellar she already had. Number 18 is a sound more than a vegetable. Green peas, and the sound of them dropping into a tin bowl on the porch on a June evening. Della grew her peas up brush and string, sown in that same staggered way, so they came in over weeks, and when they came in, the whole family sat on the porch steps and shelled them. The little ones ate as many raw as went in the pot, and nobody scolded them for it. A can of peas from the store is a grey, soft, tired thing that tastes mostly of the can. A pea shelled off the vine an hour before supper is bright green and sweet as sugar, and tastes like the actual month of June. She never bought a can of peas, and I have never once been able to bring myself to either. Some of what she grew saved money. This one saves something you cannot put a price on, and I still hear that tin bowl every summer. Number 17 goes right back into the same box of sand from number 19. Beets. Della grew a long row of them, and they kept even better than the carrots. Here is the one small detail that separates a beet that keeps from a beet that bleeds out and goes leathery. When you trim the tops, do not cut them flush to the root. Leave an inch of stem on the crown. Cut a beet flush and it bleeds its colour and its moisture out the top and shrivels by December. Leave that inch and it holds. The War Garden book put it in exactly those words, that leaving an inch or so of top prevents bleeding and drying out. So the beets went into the sand the same as the carrots. Tops left long by an inch, single layer, covered over, down in the cool dark. You go down in January, brush the sand off one, and it is as firm and as deep red as the day it came up. You do not do anything clever with a beet. You just leave the inch on and let the sand do the rest. Number 16 is the reason her whole kitchen smelled the way it did. Dried herbs. Sage, thyme, mint, dill, hung in little upside-down bundles from the rafters, drying slow and out of the sun. I have not bought a jar of dried herbs in 30 years, and I learned exactly why from her. The secret is all in the timing, and Lydia Maria Child gave it away in one line in 1832. Herbs should be gathered while in blossom, she wrote, for if left till they have gone to seed, the strength goes into the seed. So Della cut hers just as the little flowers opened, in the morning once the dew had dried, and bundled them loose and hung them in the airy dark until they crumbled between 2 fingers. A jar of dried sage on the grocery rack is a few dollars for a spoonful that lost its smell in a warehouse. The bundle off her own plant cost a pinch of seed. It was twice as strong, and the whole kitchen smelled of it clear through the winter. That smell is the very first thing I remember about her house. Number 15 never grew in any row, and yet without it the other 20 items rot in a heap by Christmas. The temperature of the cellar. There is exactly one range worth carrying in your head, and the War Garden Commission printed it in 1918. Not less than 35 degrees and not more than 50. Go below 35 and the carrots freeze and turn to mush. Go above 50 and the whole larder sprouts and rots before the new year. Della held that range with nothing but 2 vents and a thermometer. On a warm fall day, she opened the low vent to draw cold air in and closed the high vent to keep the warm air from settling. That was the entire machine. Now, Della never owned a freezer in her life. I keep a chest freezer in my basement, and I am glad of it. But that freezer eats 30 to 50 kilowatt hours every single month, and the power company bills me for every one of them. Della's cellar ran on the one thing she always had in plenty, which was nothing at all. Number 14 is the vegetable nobody ever bragged about. The turnip. It went into the sandbox the same as the carrots and the beets, tops trimmed, single layers, and it kept just as faithfully. But Della had one rule for the turnip bin, the same rule she had for all of them, and it earns its own line. Eat the small ones first. A small turnip, or a small anything, has less inside it to live on, so it softens weeks before the big ones do. So you pull the little fellows for the table in November and December, and let the big storage turnips hold the fort into February. The store, of course, sells you the biggest, shiniest turnip in the case, waxed to a gloss, and charges you by the pound for the wax. Della grew a homely turnip in a box of sand, and ate the runts first on purpose. There was never any glamour in a turnip. There was never supposed to be. There was only supper. Number 13 she planted 4 separate times, and that was the entire point. Sweet corn. Plant your whole corn patch on one day, and it all comes ripe in one furious week, more than any family can eat, and then it is gone and tough for the rest of the summer. Della planted a short block, waited 2 or 3 weeks, planted another, and did it 4 times running, exactly as the War Garden book advised for sweet corn in 1919. So the corn came to the table a little at a time, sweet and milky, from midsummer clear into the early fall, instead of all at once and then never again. The old rule was to have the pot boiling before you walked out to pick, because corn is never sweeter than the minute it leaves the stalk, and store corn, picked days ago and trucked in cold, has forgotten that it was ever sweet. Della's corn came in over a whole month of evenings, one short block at a time, and it tasted like every one of them. Number 12 is 10 minutes of work that saves 1/3 of everything you just grew, and almost nobody bothers to do it. The cull. When the harvest comes in, before a single thing goes down into storage, you spread it all out on the clean floor and go through it piece by piece. Anything cut, bruised, cracked or bug-bitten gets pulled out and set aside to eat this week. Only the sound, perfect, unblemished vegetables go down into the bin. I still sort my whole harvest by hand every fall on the kitchen table, exactly the way she made me do it, because the old saying is true, and the War Garden book of 1918 said it in so many words. 1 bruised potato will rot the dozen around it before you ever notice it. So you spend 10 minutes now with a sharp eye, or you go down in February and find a soft, stinking hole in the middle of a bin you worked all summer to fill. 10 minutes now, or 1/3 of the bin gone by February. That was never a hard choice for Della, and it has never been one for me. Number 11 is the one she buried in the cold ground and dug up sweet in February. Cabbages. Della never owned an icebox big enough to hold a winter's worth of cabbage heads, so she gave them back to the ground they grew in. She dug a shallow pit in a well-drained spot out back, set the firm, mature heads in it upside down, packed dry straw all around them, and covered the whole thing over with 6 or 8 inches of earth. Then she drove a stake in to find it under the snow. Lydia Maria Child promised the result in 1832. "Cabbages put into a hole in the ground," she wrote, "will keep well during the winter and be hard, fresh and sweet in the spring." And they were. You dug down in February, lifted out a head, and it was as crisp as October. One warning she would always give you: only bury a perfect head, because a bruised one rots down there and takes its neighbours with it. The very same rule as number 12. The ground holds a steady 34 degrees all winter long, and had kept a whole winter of cabbages for the price of a shovelful of straw. Number 10 she grew on the fence and kept in the sack, dried beans. Della grew navy beans and let a good share of the row go all the way past eating until the pods were dry and rattling on the vine, and then she shelled them out and kept them in a cloth sack in the pantry. A sack of dried beans was, to her, the same thing a savings account is to other people. Always there, always good, never spoiling, ready the moment the meat ran short. A pound of dried beans makes 6 or 8 servings of honest protein for a fraction of what a pound of meat costs. And the government's own money-saving cookbook said as much in plain print. One caution, because I will not tell you a thing that is not true. Dried beans have to be cooked all the way through, soaked overnight and then simmered soft, and kidney beans in particular need a hard boil for the first 10 minutes to be safe to eat. Done right, a pot of beans and an onion fed a whole table, and there was always another supper waiting in that sack. Number 9 is a root most people have never tasted at its best, because the store cannot sell it that way: the parsnip. It went into the sandbox like the carrots, kept the very same way, covered up in sand down cellar, and entirely excluded from the air, the way Child wrote it in 1832. But the parsnip carries a secret the others do not. It gets sweeter after a hard frost. The cold makes the plant turn its own starch to sugar. So Della left her parsnips in the ground through the first frost or two on purpose, and only then dug them and packed them into the sand. A parsnip pulled too early is a woody, bitter thing. A parsnip that took 2 frosts and then rested in the sand is sweet and nutty, and nothing at all like the little the store carries. She waited for the cold to do the work, and the waiting was the whole point. Some things are only good to the patient, and the parsnip is the sweetest lesson she ever taught me about that. Number 8 sounds backward until you have lost a whole barrel to it. Keep every bin small. A big heaping bin of potatoes looks like the very picture of a full winter. It is actually the picture of a bin about to rot from the middle out. The War Garden book warned in 1918 to keep no bin over 2 or 3 bushels, because a bigger pile heats in the centre, and the heat is where the rot begins. So Della split her harvest across 3 or 4 small slatted crates instead of one great barrel. Slatted, so the air moved through them. Small, so if one crate turned bad, she lost a crate and not the winter. It is the same reason you would not carry all your money in one pocket. A big pile looks like abundance right up until the day you learn that abundance, stacked too deep in a warm cellar, is only a faster way to make compost. 3 small crates, every time. Number 7 is the green she grew when everyone else's garden had already quit. Spinach, sown late, in the cool of the fall. Most of the garden is finished by then, But Della would sow a row of spinach and a few other hardy greens as the nights turned cold, because they pull the same trick the parsnips pull back at number 9. They sweeten in the frost. A fall spinach leaf that has taken a light frost is thicker and sweeter and better than anything that grows in the heat of summer. And here is where the store gives itself away. Come November, when her fresh green was coming on sweet in the cold garden, the greens in the market got tired and dear, trucked up from 1,000 miles south and priced for the trouble. Her row cost a packet of seed she scattered in August, and it stood out there in the cold getting better, while the stores sat wilting under a misting bar with the price climbing. The store charges you the most for green in the exact season your own yard would hand it to you sweetest. Number 6 is a vegetable the store forgot to sell you, and most people alive today have never so much as laid eyes on it. Salsify. They call it the oyster plant, and folks swore that cooked slow in a little milk, it tasted like a mild oyster stew, which for a landlocked Indiana farm in the Depression was a small miracle on a plate. It is a long, pale root, and it kept in the damp sand exactly like the carrots and beets, right there in the same box. The War Garden book listed it by name in 1918, alongside the beets and turnips and salsify, to be buried in sand. Nobody grows it anymore. You will not find it in your grocery store, not at any price, because the seed companies quit pushing it and the world quietly let it go. Della grew a row of it every year and never once thought it was anything remarkable. That is the saddest kind of forgotten. Not a thing that was banned or lost, just a good and humble thing that everybody, one quiet season at a time, simply stopped bothering to grow. Number 5 is the trick for the days you do have to walk into that store. And it is where I want to name the villain plainly. The produce aisle. That whole bright misted green wall at the front of the supermarket is not built to feed you. It is built to sell you back, by the pound and by the season, the exact food a patch of dirt would have grown you for a packet of seed. The store puts the big number right in front of your face, up in bold. The honest number is hiding down at the bottom of the shelf tag in tiny print, the price per ounce or per pound, and that little number is the one they are hoping you never do the math on. I read the bottom of every tag now, out loud, and I do not much care who hears me. Lydia Maria Child gave the whole warning back in 1832. Do not let the cheapness of a thing, she wrote, tempt you to buy what you do not need. The store brand sitting down on the bottom shelf runs 20 to 25% under the name brand at eye level for the very same goods. They rent you your own food back to you by the week. The only way out of that arrangement is a patch of dirt and a baking powder tin. Number 4 is the one she hung upstairs, and the one she would holler at you for carrying down to the cellar. Onions. Of everything Della put by, the onion was the easiest to keep and the easiest to lose, and the whole difference between the two came down to a single word: dry. After harvest, she let the onions cure in an airy shed for 2 or 3 weeks until the necks were dry and papery, then braided the tops and hung them in the attic, or the pantry, or the dry corner of the porch, anywhere with moving air and no damp. What she would not do, ever, was carry them down into the cellar with the roots, because the same damp that keeps a carrot sweet will rot an onion in a week. Child put it flat in 1832. Onions should be kept very dry, she wrote, and never carried into the cellar except in the hardest freeze. Keep them dry and they last clear to March. So if you had ever, in front of my grandmother, reached to set the onions down beside the potato bin, you would have heard about it from clear across the cellar. Some crops want the damp. The onion wants a dry attic and to be left alone. Number 3 is 30 seconds of work that saves you from a very particular February heartbreak. Write the date on everything. Everyone is sure they will remember which jar and which sack is the oldest. Nobody remembers. Della kept a stub of pencil and a roll of paper by the cellar door, and the day a thing went into storage, she wrote what it was and the day she put it there, and she kept a running list in a notebook hung on a nail. New stock went to the back, old stock came to the front, and you always pulled from the front. The USDA wrote that exact system down in a bulletin in 1977. Name it, date it, rotate it. But Della had it running 50 years before the government printed it, because it is not clever. It is only honest bookkeeping. An unmarked shelf is how a family gets to February, reaches for the peaches, finds the pickles, and finds the peaches gone soft 3 rows back behind them, unnoticed and wasted. So she named it, dated it, and turned it, and nothing on her shelf ever spoiled in the dark without her knowing about it first. Number 2 did not grow in the garden, but it came out of the yard just the same, and she never bought it either. Eggs. Della kept hens, and hens do not lay steady. They flood you with eggs in the spring and the early fall, then taper off to almost nothing in the deep cold. You could ride that wave and just pay the high winter price without a word. Della never did. In the flush, when eggs were everywhere, she laid the extras down. The old way was a crock of lime water, 1 pint of coarse salt, and 1 pint of unslaked lime to a pail of water, straight out of Child in 1832, and a sound egg would keep down in that cold crock for months. Now, I will be honest with you, the way I mean to be honest about everything on this list. That is a historical method, and the sensible modern move is simply to buy an extra flat at the spring low, keep it cold, and use it within a few months. Either way, the lesson is the one Della lived by every year of her life. You buy the egg once, in the season it is cheap, and you eat it in the season it is dear. She paid spring prices in January, right through the coldest month of the year. And number 1, the single crop that fed the whole family clear through to spring for not 1 red cent, the potato. It is the humblest thing in the entire cellar, and it was the most important, because a good bin of potatoes was the whole difference between a winter of suppers and a winter of worry. Della dug hers only after the vines had died back and the skins had set firm, cured them a week or so to heal the little nicks, and then binned them in the dark, because any light at all turns a potato green and bitter, and a green potato is one you cut away or throw out, never one you eat. She kept them cool, she kept them dark, she kept the bins small the way we said back at number 8, and she culled the bruised ones out the way we said at number 12, so not 1 bad potato could ever take the bin. And then, in the spring, she did the one last thing that Child insisted on all the way back in 1832, and that every old farmer swore by. She broke off every sprout the moment it showed, every eye that tried to grow pinched clean off, so the potato spent its strength staying a potato instead of turning itself into a plant. A bin kept like that fed the family from October clear into the following June, and every single meal of it came up her own cellar stairs, and not 1 bite of it ever came out of a store. You could add it all up if you wanted to. The carrots she never bought, the cabbages, the onions, the whole long winter of potatoes, the eggs at spring prices in the dead of January. It would come to real money, more than you would guess, year after year after year. But I do not think that was ever what it was really about for her, and I do not think it is what it is about for me either. Della grew that food and kept that food, because it meant that when the world outside got lean and mean and expensive, and in her lifetime it surely did, her family did not have to ask anybody's permission to eat. The independence was the whole point. The supermarket was just a place she did not have to go. That dented red baking powder tin is still as real to me as this table. A garden, a cool cellar, and a tin of seed saved off your own best plants, and you are, in the smallest and most stubborn way there is, free. That is the one thing the produce owl can never sell you, because the whole business depends on you not knowing you could have grown it yourself. So let me ask you the question I most want answered. What did your family grow that you never had to buy? Tell me down in the comments the one thing that was worth the dirt. I read every last one of them. This is Granny Pearl, and I will leave the porch light on for you.